Trevor Lawrence has a shot to be an MVP candidate, and I'll tell you what has to happen for that to occur here today on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That is a fact. It is your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for making us your first listen. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast that you can find wherever you get your podcast, man. Make sure you tap into that location, whether you watch or listen. We will be there making sure we bring you the coverage that you need of the Jacksonville Jaguars, especially as we head into training camp. And today's episode is sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Hello again to the everydayers and to any newcomers. Hopefully, I give you a reason to come back here. Check this out. We're going to talk about Trevor Lawrence potentially being an MVP candidate. We'll end talking about the things that cannot happen if that is going to occur. Right in the middle of the show, these things must happen. Specific things must happen for Trevor Lawrence to actually be considered an MVP. But I'll start at the very top before we even get to the point where somebody says, all right, Wig, that's a big leap. I'm going to tell you how and why I got here. I believe in Trevor, and I believe in Liam Cohen, and I believe in Coach Udinski, the offensive coordinator, and I believe in Sean Starrett, the offensive line coach. And I believe in Travis Hunter, and I believe in Brian Thomas Jr. So we'll stop right there because with those guys, we're going to talk about the individual pieces in segment number 2. But the main thing for me is the alignment with the staff. I sat here and heard for 3 years how, well, at least for 2 years, the last 2 years, the first year Doug Peterson was here, we didn't hear much complaining because that was coming behind the Urban Meyer fiasco and maybe the worst Jaguar team I've ever seen. And then they made the playoffs. But after that, there was so much talk about Press Taylor and Doug and how bad the offense is and how stagnant they are and the lack of talent and the big bodies that didn't exist, the big strong people that didn't exist on the offensive line, and how running backs got touched really, really fast. How they could not convert on third down when they got inside the goal line. And eventually they couldn't keep Trevor healthy and upright. I heard about all of that stuff. I heard about Phil Rauscher and Press Taylor. And I saw Evan Ingram. And I saw Zay Jones. And I saw Christian Kirk all get banged up. So what does it tell me? It tells me that if Trevor Lawrence had all of those things going on around him at one time, and granted, I know people complain about stuff when teams aren't winning, but we did a whole bunch of complaining around here in a year. One of those years, they actually won 9 games, and we complained. Then last year, when it totally went off the rails, we had even more reasons to complain. And I was right in line. I was the first in line. If we going to jail for complaining, lock me up and put me on the bus first. I'm Hannibal Lecter, man, because I was the one going off on this team all of that time. So I can't in good faith sit here and say that a quarterback that came into the NFL as one of the top prospects at his position in the history of the league and had that to deal with. And I ain't even mentioned the Urban Meyer. I did kind of mention it, but I didn't really put this on Trevor. And he had the Urban Meyer thing. And after that, he had 3 years of Doug Peterson, Press Taylor, Phil Rauscher, on a team built by Trent Baalke. I can't in good faith, even if I'm a Trevor hater, man, sit here and say he ought to be like the most horrible statistical quarterback you've ever seen. Based on all of those things I just said, there's nothing that was going right. Why would we expect him? And this is the thing that these national guys sometimes get on my nerves with. And I ain't going to harp on them too much because maybe they shouldn't know some of the things that we know. But sometimes you got to pause and not speak until you ask somebody. We know all of those things and a whole bunch more was going on around here. They don't, right? But they'll sit there and just in a vacuum Look at the numbers. Look at the mistakes, because the mistakes always, when they show highlights now, if you ain't got a bunch of highlights, they're going to show the lowlights. And they always show the mistakes. They show the fumbles. They show all of these things. And I'll back that up in just a second. But they do that, and then these people go, he ain't that good. Or somebody watches a game that finally gets televised on TV, and they go, Trevor Lawrence stinks. Without understanding and acknowledging that this is the ultimate team sport. This ain't basketball where you can be on a bad team and go out there and cook somebody for 40 points and people will go, he don't have no help. No, it doesn't work that way. There are a lot of things that have to go right and a lot of things that can go wrong that will flat out derail a guy's season and his career. They'll get broken. We've seen it. I ain't the biggest RG3 fan in the world, but I was a Commanders fan or a Washington franchise fan when he was a quarterback, and they ruined him. After he had a hot start to his career, he got ruined, and he was never the same. And I'll give him that much. It's about all I'm going to give him, but I'll give him that much. So the thing is, listen, man, if football isn't that way, that's why guys like Rich Gannon and Jim Plunkett later on in their career ended up being really, really good. You know why? Because they finally got with a team that was really, really good. Even Kirk Cousins got better when he left Washington. And he was a part of that whole RG3 thing too. He got better in Minnesota. He did. He earned about $400 million, but he got better. The thing is, man, is people have judged Trevor Lawrence in a vacuum, and it was all based on expectation. It was all based on the other side of those national media guys that's coming up with all of this hype and giving them all of these nicknames because they want to try to be the smartest person in the room or the first person to come up with something so they could look what I did. But the bottom line is it destroyed some narratives and it destroyed some things that we should be paying attention to as to why Trevor wasn't good. You fix all of that. You bring in Liam Cohen, who has a proven track record. Liam Cohen was at Kentucky, and he made Will Levis look good, right? And then Liam Cohen goes back to the Rams for a second stint, and they look good with him there. Then he goes back to college, and then he goes to Tampa, and he does a marvelous job with Baker Mayfield. And Baker bought in after Dave Canales left, and that's the key. Liam Cohen adjusted. Sometimes he wanted to run the zone. Sometimes he wanted to run gap. He ran whatever was comfortable for those players. He lost a Hall of Fame receiver and then a very good all-pro or Pro Bowl type receiver in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and he still got that team to the playoffs. Those guys came, but Godwin didn't, but Mike Evans came back late in the season. And he got them into the playoffs. And he was the offensive coordinator on a team that actually beat both Philly and Detroit last year and had Washington on the ropes. I think the alignment, I think the restructuring of the front office, I think James Gladstone and his ability to identify talent, and Tony Boselli, his ability to galvanize people and know big picture what this franchise needs, along with Liam Cohen, I think that's going to be the biggest help to Trevor Lawrence because he will essentially be getting something he's never had, and that is alignment in his front office, understanding of what they want to do, and someone who, in Trevor's words, will provide him answers pre-snap. And I think that's a big, big thing. Working on all the little things, all the mechanics, all of those things will show up, and he can get a little bit of a bump in his performance. And when they get a bump in wins, that's when the fortunes of this team is going to change. And that's where I want to come back to. I'm going to tell you all of the things that must happen for Trevor Lawrence to be an MVP candidate. I didn't say win an MVP. I say to be in that top 5, top 6 group. And you hear him every single season. I'll tell you all the things that have to go good for Trevor to do that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel. No doubt about that, man. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling, man? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. You can even go with them if you do it early enough. Whether I'm placing the same game parlay or watching a bet ride into the 9th inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Moving and grooving here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. Training camp is coming. Couple of weeks, man. We are almost there. Credential requests went out. I cannot wait. There'll be practices and all of that stuff, and fans will be there. It'll be like having a big family reunion. You know, the media guys, yeah, that's cool, but just seeing the fans, man. I know somebody's gonna make some chili. My man's gonna make that chili. He's been making that chili for years, and it's good too. It's the only time I eat chili when it's hot because it is so delicious. Shout out to all the Jaguar fans who listen to Locked On Jaguars each and every day, whether you're in town or not in town. We appreciate you. I thank you, and I really am eternally grateful for you guys spending this half hour with us each and every day. All right, so this must happen. In order for Trevor Lawrence to be considered an MVP candidate, they got to win some games. I know Joe Burrow and that crew, they were about 500 last year, but he also threw for a gazillion yards and touchdowns. I don't think Trevor's stats have to be that. In fact, I don't think they will be that because the Jaguars are going to run the ball. They got 4 running backs. They've made it very, very clear that they need to be a team that can actually move the ball on the ground and can grind out and keep, teams honest. So I think they're going to have more of a commitment to the run than the Bengals had because the Bengals didn't have a running game or an offense. Now, Sidney Brown's a good player, but you get my point. I think the Jaguars are going to be extremely intentional about how much they run the ball. That does not mean he won't have great stats, though. I just don't think he's going to have 5,000 yards. I sit him at 4,300 and be cool, maybe a little more, maybe 4,500 in the 30-some-odd touchdowns. I love some-odd. I don't know what it is, but you know what it is if you're from Florida. 30-some-odd touchdowns, and he has to keep the turnovers to a minimum. I know it's easy to look at turnovers and say, okay, you had 15 interceptions, right? If 3 of them were Hail Marys and 2 of them were tipped balls off of Tank Bigsby or somebody else's hands that weren't his fault, the stats don't tell you that. So, or if a receiver goes the wrong way, you'll know the coaches and the quarterback will say, hey, and then the receiver will go, my bad. But yeah, if it's picked off, nobody says anything about it. But, that's kind of relative, and all quarterbacks have to go through that. But the turnovers have to go down. The wins have to go up. Trevor also has to stay upright. And that means the offensive line has to be way better than they've been in the past. In terms of things that cannot happen that we'll talk about in segment 3, that is number 1 on the top of the list, so I'll push that back. So we're going to talk about the pluses, the things that have to happen. Brian Thomas Jr. has to be good, just like he was last year. I don't think we got to worry about that. Travis Hunter has to be as good we believe he can be, and they have to figure out a way to manage him properly. I don't think we got to worry about that. The running backs, all of those running backs on offense, man, I mean, you could sit here and say they need a lead dog or an alpha. It's going to be Travis Etienne until it's not, but Tank Bigsby's going to play, and then they're going to give both of those rookies, Bashaw Tootin as well as LaQuinn Allen, they're going to give them a chance. They're going to give them a chance to put their stamp on this team and to carve out a little niche for themselves. I'd be cool with the committee thing, but I think they need to average over 4 yards a carry. They need to average over 4 yards a carry for that to happen. The defense, and I know Trevor's on offense, he's the quarterback. The defense has to get the opponent off the field at a higher clip. A lot of 3 and outs, because the 3 and outs will allow the running game to start leaning on these other teams, which creates passing lanes and play action and on misdirection and rollouts. And that's something that Liam has done in his offense a lot, where when you do that and you get people going like that on 3rd and 5, man, and a little misdirection rollout and open out one way and reverse back the other way. I think they call it 42 wide banana or something like that, those plays. I saw Tampa so many times last year get 6 when they needed 5. And it was easy. It was pitch and catch. They need 6, they get 7. I saw that so much. And guys were running well after the catch. And it was like a well-oiled machine. The Jaguars have to absolutely do that. And one thing that can help them doing that is time of possession. Every game the Jaguars lost or did not play well in last year, the other team would have the ball 35 minutes and the Jaguars would have it 24 and a half, 25 minutes. And it just can't be that way. You have to sustain the ball. You have to have drives. That's where the running game comes in. That's where the offensive line comes in. So basically what I'm saying is Trevor has to first buy in, totally buy in, like strip everything down to the studs and go back. And they've already done that and started working with his mechanics and all of those things. And then this is a critical thing, and I know I'll get to this too. You got to keep momentum going. And there's a different way that I'll be able to talk about that. This team as a whole has to be smarter. They are already being taught differently. That is the way, and they have to be more consistent with what they do, because we have seen so many times in the past, all of the things that they say they did in practice, they did not translate to the game. And it looked like they were on game day looking around at each other, wondering why this stuff wasn't working, right? That's where all of those answers pre-snap comes in. That's where understanding what it is and what it looks like and being able to put the ball in the hands of playmakers. I'm going to use a basketball analogy. Sometimes you just go cold, man. You can't throw it in the ocean, right? You know what a coach does? He calls a timeout. A coach will have 2 plays on inbounds. It is designed to get an easy basket. It is your go-to play that you know is going to work, and it usually involves your 2 best people. Go to it. Keep it simple. Go do your thing. You almost like you got to impose your will. And in order to impose your will on people like that, you have to have superlative talented athletes. And they do. And number 7, number 12, and then Diami Brown is going to have some opportunities too because of his speed and his ability to take the top off the defense. Brenton Strange has been the dude that everyone wants to make a top 10 wide receiver. I hope you're right. And there's a lot because he's another person I believe is going to benefit from this new staff. They seem to be the type of staff that always gets the best out of the tight end position, regardless of where they are. And it not just be, okay, you got one guy that's a move tight end and another guy that's a blocker. No, they're not going to do that. I think they have guys, and I'm not saying they're going to all be statistical leaders, but I do believe that they'll have guys that'll get you 1 or 2 first downs per game. And those are the things that are consistent with keeping those drives alive that I've been talking about. All right, this cannot happen. There's some things that cannot happen. It involves the offensive line. And when things don't go well, the team cannot hang their head. I'll discuss those in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. I'm talking about Trevor Lawrence and his potential as an MVP candidate. And a lot of the things I have mentioned don't have anything directly to do with him. We talked about him. We talked about the things that he has to do, the things that the coaching staff is bringing that he has to embrace. We also discussed the defense and how they getting more 3 and outs with their activity. And I like what they've done up front with the edge position as well as the defensive backs. And just the scheme overall, they're going to get that ball back to Trevor. The team needs to run the ball also to make sure that they have time of possession. This is what can't happen. That offensive line cannot be anywhere near as bad as they have been the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. It cannot. The Jaguars cannot find themselves in the bottom half, that's 17 or beyond, in terms of where their offensive line is ranked or viewed. There are people around the league, coaches, analysts, former coaches, great coaches. I think Belichick even said it. If he didn't say it, somebody said he said it. That they're just soft. They are. That don't mean they didn't play hard. They just have a soft mentality. They was talking about them not being big and strong enough. They got to be more physical. It sounded like Trent and Doug, when they were saying that, were talking about what the players have to do to make themselves more physical. And then all of a sudden, we hear Trent get up to the combine and say, well, you don't become big and physical once you get to the NFL. You're kind of born that way, and it kind of weird, but, I guess whatever. So why didn't you pick the people that were born that way? That's the thing that kills me, man. It was never any accountability around here. But see, that's going to change. And I think when that changes, these guys are going to be accountable. But that means players can't duck and hide either. You can't hide Luke Fortner. You can't hide guys that aren't moving people. You can't say it's just continuity and guys being. Remember, Doug Peterson tried to tell y'all, well, these guys only played one game together. Well, we saw them play a whole bunch of games together last year, and we got the same result. Ain't nothing different. Ain't nothing different. They tried to sell you on the fact that it was basically the lack of health for the offensive line that had them looking so bad. If that line would have been 20% better, the Jaguars probably would have made the playoffs in 2023. I don't know. Last year, they probably wasn't going to do nothing because it was just time for it to go. But still, that's why you lose all of those close games. You lose all of those close. The Jaguars, I think over the last 2 years, they had more one-score losses than anybody. You know, those are the margins. The margins are in the trenches when you can't convert on third and short and when you continue to have to either go for it or you have to kick field goals. That can't happen. That's the number one thing. The second thing is if things go wrong, teams lose games in the NFL. You can't hang your head. We saw the world champion Chiefs have injuries, have guys racing on the road and getting suspended, and other guys tearing their knee up, and rookies, and another rookie wide receiver girlfriend abused them and all of this stuff because he broke up with her and all. They had all of this turmoil going on. You know what they did? They weren't playing Chief football, but guess what? They won all of those games, and they were almost like what 16 and 1 or 17. And they got smoked in the Super Bowl, but still, they stayed the course. The Jaguars have traditionally gotten into these funks, and they can't get out of it. They got to learn how to have a short memory. And I think that has a lot to do with the coaching staff that I spoke about earlier. But still, you never know, just like your kid, when you teach him how to fight, you never know until he gets out there and you don't send him out there like Jackie Chan. You don't send him out there trying to whoop everybody, but you'll find out if what you taught becomes an instinct and he knows how to do it, because there's enough people out here that always try people. Trust me, they do it all day on social media. But you don't know until you see it. That's why I like this coaching staff, man, when they say we don't know. We're going to have our own identity. We don't know. We got to figure it out. But I'm telling you, if this thing rises up, if the Jaguars get to the point where they are like a 12-win team and Trevor Lawrence is doing his thing and he's totally healthy for all 17 regular season games, and he is the one leading this team, looking like all of those adjectives and nicknames that everybody wanted to give him, looking like the dude that you saw at Clemson, looking like the guy you saw in the second half of the playoff game against the Los Angeles Chargers, and the Jaguars win, then people will start to serve notice. They blame him for everything since they've been losing, even though we all know it's not his fault. But because he's the quarterback, he's going to get the brunt of that. When they win, guess what's going to happen? He's going to be given that credit. And it's going to be a bigger and better recovery, I believe, than Jared Goff. Because Jared Goff did go to the Super Bowl with one team, got traded to another, and then he had all of these things around him that insulate him. And when they ask Goff to do too much, he always throws big picks. Look at the games that they lost last year. He was throwing interceptions. Everybody want to blame it on the defense, but it was him. But they had to try to keep up, too, because the defense had so many injuries. Well, if you put Trevor Lawrence in a situation like that, Trevor Lawrence is more talented than Jared Goff. Trevor Lawrence makes throws that Jared Goff can't dream of making. Trevor will throw the ball down the field, and Trevor will run and extend plays. Like to see him get out of bounds. Don't take unnecessary hits. Last thing is, this cannot happen. Of course, he has to stay healthy. I wanted to bring that up. He has to stay healthy. And that goes back, again, to that front, the offensive line. Has to stay healthy, has to not fall into bad habits. That one habit I want to see him break is when he reverses out over when he's facing right and he spins to his left. I can't stand it. When he drops that right shoulder and he turns the other way, I really don't like when he does that, because it's like every time he does it, he's never able to get back to the throwing position. He's running towards the sideline. Sometimes he runs out of bounds and takes a 7-yard loss instead of just slinging the ball to the hot dog stand. And there are many times when he does that also, he fumbles or he gets tripped by somebody reaching out and grabbing a leg. And, I just do not like Trevor Lawrence running towards his left. So I hope that's another habit that is broken. But hopefully he won't have to be running for his life, because the timing of this offense, the rhythm, the nature of this offense, all of it. And I'm telling you, he can get himself positioned where people start looking and saying, that kid in Jacksonville, man, you got to give him some consideration. People were saying that about Baker Mayfield last year. You got to give him some consideration now. At first, they were saying it about Sam Darnold too, but people weren't really sold on Sam Darnold, because when they finally played somebody, Sam Darnold kind of turned back into Sam Darnold. Shout out to him for getting that contract he got for Seattle, but still, there were people saying, you know what? Somebody might decide, okay, he ain't an MVP candidate, but we're gonna give him most improved player. Can't really say comeback, but you can say most improved. No, we want to be greedy. We want to put Trevor Lawrence in the MVP discussion, and that's what we're going to do, because we're Locked On Jaguars. We can do what we want to do. That's what we do. Make sure now, as you get ready for training camp, you tune in to Locked On NFL Scouting with Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino. I don't know two people that you want to tell them to go on vacation. You know what they're going to do? They're going to talk about scouting. This is their job, but it's actually like what they enjoy doing. You want to punish them, you tell them they can't talk football. And that's how smart they are. They'll make you smarter about your team too as you head to training camp, no matter who you root for. Go check out Locked On NFL Scouting wherever you get your podcast. All right, it's been fun. 27 minutes. Good to see you. Pretty soon, when training camp, people are like, well, Wig, where you been? Where you been? All right, the company knows what our policy is during this off-season time. The month of July is the month of July, right? Training camp's coming. We're going to be here every day. Sometimes even bonus coverage, because that's what you want. And I know that's what you want. I know we're all happy, man, but we got to get to the point. We got to start getting in our competition mind frame, because iron sharpens iron. Make sure you check out Locked On Jaguars wherever you get your podcast. It's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. I'm Tony Wiggins. We will see you later.